Welcome to my channel. This is an indication of some of the things that I cover on a regular basis in my videos. If you haven't already subscribed, please feel free to do so, and don't forget to click the little bell so that you'll get notified of future videos. Please feel free to share my videos on your social media, and I hope you enjoy the video which follows. Hello everybody. To start this week's video, we're going to play the Sesame Street game. Which one of these things is not like the other? What we're looking at there is one of the spaghetti squash on the left, and I guess you can also see one of the black futsu next to it. The two vines have grown closely together. I bought the spaghetti squash seedlings at a garden center, a 6-pack or something like that, I think, and planted them in various locations, and I don't know, I haven't done a count, but I'm getting a good number of them. Not a lot, less than 10 I would think. But what I want to show you next was also supposed to be a spaghetti squash. Now this thing is growing at a different area, but it's on one of the vines that is supposed to be spaghetti squash. And I think obviously it's some kind of a pumpkin, not a huge pumpkin. Maybe what they call a pie pumpkin or something like that. Either their supplier for seeds got things mixed up, or they got cross-pollinated, or somebody that was seeding their 6-packs for them earlier in the spring thought it would be funny to put a pumpkin in. I don't mind at all. I've got plenty of spaghetti squash out of it, and it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. Still green, but I suspect it will turn a pumpkin orange sometime this fall. I'm having good luck with the Japanese Keri squash or Hokkaido pumpkin, whichever you prefer to call it. They're not huge, but then they're usually not huge anyway. But where I'm standing right here, I can see 4, and I think there are more that are where the vines have ran off into the bushes. Every time I see a female flower, if I have to go off into the bushes even, I hand pollinate it. So, and they've turned their lovely orange color. I'll show you a close-up with one of the larger ones here. They're a very tasty squash, even eaten just as a vegetable. But there's an Asian soup uses coconut milk as the cream or base in the soup or whatever, that is absolutely delicious made with them. So I know I'll be doing that, plus just eating them as a vegetable. They're a very tasty squash. This is one of the black futsu squash. I think the first one that got pollinated, actually. It's also the one that is the darkest green so far. The others are still quite a light green, because this one I think has more exposure to direct sunlight. But they go almost black. The green is so dark when they're fully ripe, which is where they get their name, I guess. But it's been 2 or 3 years since I've grown them, but I really like them. They're a good squash, and hopefully will store well. And of course I've had lots of the costata romanesca, the Italian heirloom variety of zucchini. They've been very good. They grow rapidly and get overgrown quite quickly. That one there is on its way to being larger than I would actually use. I want a couple of large ones though. I make a summer squash zucchini relish, which I really like. And I add lots of hot chilies to it, and the chilies are coming along quite nicely too. So I guess you can also see one of the spaghetti squash off to the right there. When they get really overgrown and I won't use them, I cut them in half lengthwise, and then I might cut them into quarters from there and give them to the hens. They absolutely love the things. When they're out free ranging, I give this to them, and before they go back in that evening, there's just part of the green shell left. Well, I guess you can see the top of my baby blue hubbard, which is still green, hasn't gone its bluish green yet. But all 3 of the plants that came back from the attack here, I guess you can see the 3 of them there, I believe all 3 of them are baby blue hubbards. You can eat those things right down to the ground, evidently, and they'll still come back. The one that's next to the plant that has the squash on it also just had a female blossom a few days ago, and I hand pollinated it, so that should give me a second one. This tiny plant down here, I don't know. We're into late August now, and really by the time September arrives here, we're well into autumn or fall, whatever you want to call it. So if anything on that will have a chance to mature or not, but I'm so surprised that 3 of them all came back from being eaten right down to ground level. I just pulled the last of the beets, not meaning to deceive you. That's only about a quarter of a basket full. I shook them all down in one end here. A few of them are a decent size. Most of them are small. But, they were a variety that is supposed for a market gardener to grow to sell baby beets and beet greens. So I don't think they're meant to grow terribly large anyway, but they've been delicious. The greens are too tough on them now to eat, but I have a tray of seedlings that I hope to put in a few minutes, so I don't know if they have time for them to grow baby beets for me here or not, but I'm sure I'll get some beet greens out of it. It's a day later from the last clip. I did get the beets transplanted last evening. They're still looking kind of laid flat from where I watered them in. I think there were 22. Some of them are more than one beet in the clump, but time will tell if I get any more baby beets or just get some nice beet greens to enjoy. The cucumber patch is looking a bit disturbed this morning. I did some weeding in it last night. Some kind of a large weed, I don't know what you'd call it, grows up in the middle of it. I hadn't been paying much attention to it, but I pulled a lot of it out last night. There's still some of it there. But these have been incredible. The variety I think is called Quarantine. It is a European gherkin, and as I think I've said a dozen times before, it's the kind that has all female blossoms. Every blossom produces a seedless cucumber. I have used 15 pounds of them myself to make 3 batches of bread and butter pickles, and I have given another 20 pounds of them away to friends and neighbors. Amazing. Only 8 plants. They're looking a bit on the ratty side now. It's getting towards the end of the season, but they are still producing cucumbers. Never seen anything like it. Looking down my long row of tomato plants here, another thing that has really been producing this summer, and still lots there. I see some overgrown basil in flower there. I don't know if that's a mistake or not. Let that drop seeds, but I guess I wouldn't mind if I had a greenhouse full of basil next year. But I think I've said dozens of times before also, the only variety that I'm growing is cole, except for a couple of volunteers that have come up in here. And I have had ripe tomatoes since the middle of July. I have a lot that I just took in the house day before yesterday, maybe a dozen or more, and now there are more that really need to be picked, plus there are lots of green ones yet to ripen, so that has worked out very well. This is one of the volunteer tomatoes. I'm amazed at how well it has done since it started from seed in here in the greenhouse. All my other ones were started under lights early in the house. I'd certainly planned to save seed from it. That one that's really starting to ripen up there is very large, so I don't think it's a cole. It's something that I've grown in here before, I don't know quite what. But it does seem to have, that one and a couple next to it have different shapes than the rest. The rest is sort of shaped like what a cole is shaped like. At any rate, anything that would come from seed, bloom, and produce tomatoes in the season here, without having to start them early, I will definitely save some of those seeds and try growing it again next year. The Spanish chili arbol, I guess is the A-R-B-O-L is the name, producing lots of chilies. No sign of any of them ripening, turning red yet, but I'm sure that will happen at some point in the next few weeks. However, I will probably use a lot of them green because I'm getting some good-sized zucchinis and I want to make my hot zucchini relish again. I love the stuff. I pulled my onions last evening. Not huge, but a good medium size, most of them. Some are smaller, but I won't have to buy onions for quite some time anyway. I don't know. I probably won't be bothered weighing them, but there's a decent amount of onions there. One of my subscribers in, I think, New Zealand sent me some little partial seed packets, and one was, I think, was called yellow shallots. And I did start them from seed and put them in with the onions and forgot about them. And I got 2. I haven't really inspected the bed that closely. There may be some more in there that died back. Those aren't huge, but growing something from seed that normally grows in the southern hemisphere, I'm pleased that I at least got something to try. Well, I'm up at the community garden, going to harvest a few of my potatoes. As you can see, the plants are really starting to go over, even though I've kept them watered in this long dry spell. I can't remember exactly when I planted them, but I'm sure it's been more than 90 days ago, and most potatoes are ready in 90 days. The only thing I do remember is that after I planted them, we had one more snowstorm. What didn't amount to much, but the hay that I planted them in was white with snow. So I'll pull up 2 or 3 plants and see what I get. I'm going to pull up Yukon Gold. They're on the left side of the bed. On the right side is russet. I only took 1 or 2 russets earlier by sneaking down into the hay and selecting a few, and they were quite small. And then someone who knows more about potatoes than I do, one of my subscribers here, you probably know who you are, I can't remember, told me that russets are always the last ones that they harvest. They're slow to grow, so some of the russet plants this end of the bed are dead, I suppose, are looking pretty dead. They're not going to get any larger, but anyway, today I'm going to pull up some Yukon Gold. The ones that I have been sneaking out of the bed have been, some of them have been quite large, so we'll see what we get. Those aren't so big. It is a Ruth Stout bed, but I did put a good layer of that organic ProMix compost in the bottom of the bed before I laid the potatoes on top of it. And then covered it with hay. Other than that, it's just had water. I think that might be the seed potato. And some of the seed potatoes were huge. That's enough. I've pulled 3 plants. Let's see what we can find down in there. I'm almost certain that's a seed potato. It looks darker than the other ones. It is quite large for a seed potato. All basically from one potato vine, I think. No, here's a rotten one. That's a seed potato, so that can't be a seed potato, I guess. about it. Sure, I'm probably missing some of the tiny ones. They'll come up in the bed next year. Well, I will weigh those, I guess, when I get home and put the weight on the screen. That's from 3 seed potatoes. I don't know. I would say there's probably 5 pounds or more there, but I'm not sure. Anyway, the weight will go on the screen just about now, or previous to this little announcement. Well, I'll finish this off with a few clips taken around the community garden here. I didn't grow anything but potatoes up here this year, so I didn't have a sunflower, but somebody is growing a lovely tall sunflower. This bed of strawberries belongs to the lodge here, and it's still producing berries, so evidently they are the ever-bearing kind. It really has filled in. There was lots of space between the plants earlier in the year, and there have been lots of lovely ripe strawberries on it. I've been so tempted to pick one, but I haven't. I left them alone. Hopefully a few of the hay bale gardens are in view there. Somebody was telling me the other day, one of the people that has a hay bale garden, that they're having a little problem with them this year. The hay bales weren't as good as the ones they used last year. They seem to be looser and they're collapsing or whatever, but the growth in them still looks very good to me. Gigantic tomato plants in the one to the left there, and I see squash, mostly squash I guess, and some cucumbers in some of the other ones, but the plants all look very healthy. We have had an extremely hot, dry summer, so it's been a lot of work for everybody up here, watering almost daily. With the straw covering mine, I can get by every 2 or 3 days with watering, but most of the other beds, I'm sure, have to be watered at least once a day. And this herb garden belongs to the lodge as well, and it has filled out really nicely, and they've got a nice sunflower growing in it. I'll use this overview shot looking back at the beds to close down the video and say thank you very much for watching. Despite the fact that it was a long, hot, dry summer, the gardens here are still looking very good, and I think all of the gardeners have had great success. They've had a lot to harvest this year. We are getting now what feels more like fall or autumn weather to me. Cooler at night. I think it went down to 13 degrees last night, went down to 12 degrees the night before. And the 3 previous days to this, we've even had some rain showers. We went all summer without rain, but when you get close to the end of August, it starts to feel like fall here. Probably 5 or 6 weeks away yet before we get our first frost, but the temperature changes, and thankfully the humidity is gone. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the video.